Thank you ever so much, everybody. Sorry about the slight, we had technical difficulties which have been resolved. So I'm Councillor Emma Marshall. I am the new chair. So really excited today, and just to let you know a little bit about me for those who haven't worked with me before. My mum of four, two of my children have got SEND. So I think I've got a fair amount of experience. I actually homeschooled my child too. So I've got a lot of experience from that end of it. And I'm also a governor of the preschool board in so I'm hoping I can do this panel justice. So bear with me today, it's the first time obviously chairing this meeting, and I'll try and do the best I can. I also want to welcome Councillor Desmond as my vice chair. I'm really pleased to have you next to me, so we'll make a good team. We also have Councillor Clayton, who has joined the committee, so thank you very much. Councillor Tissa also has been fortunate, he hasn't played it yet. And I also want to give thanks to Councillor Chambers, who's the previous chairman, who has handed to me in a very good shape. Thank you very much. Councillor Ross, who was the previous vice chairman, and Councillor Daisley for their contributions to this panel. I'd also like to welcome the CMR for education and the CMR for children and families, and congratulations both of you on your appointments. Well, we're not going to go easy on you, don't think that. And also congratulations, a welcome to Empower to us today to present. We're really excited to see this. We have got some apologies. First of all, say meeting is being recorded and it will be up online after the meeting has finished. Make you all aware. We have got some apologies.
We have, Chairman, we've got Councillor Halcott, Tanya, and General.
Thank you. We could go on to agenda item 2, which is declaration of interest in party group. No, I didn't see that. And agenda item 3 is public participation, which there is not. So agenda item 4 will go on to the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Now I have read this, I wasn't there personally, so I
It's just me then.
it's accurate.
It wasn't.
Is everyone happy then for us to accept them? Perfect. I'll sign it after. So this means we go on to our substantive item today, which is power, and so that the value and care project and following efficiency. In attendance for this, we have Tina. Can I just say this is going to be your last meeting this year? Indeed. Well, it's my first.
It's not you personally.
But a massive thank you for everything you've done over the. We also have Neil White, who's the Assistant Director, Safeguarding Services to Children First. Dominic Biscombe, the Delivery Director for Children and Social Care at Legal Aid Power, and Fiona Beth, he's the Delivery Director. So I'm going to pass this over to the
I'll just introduce. So, yes, thanks the team for being here. So the work that we're just going to present now hasn't started yet. So this is the very early presentation of what we are going to do. What we have presented before is the context to this, which is, I'm sure all members will know, is the challenge that we have with sufficiency for children placements. Our challenge is seated in, we want all children who need to be in care to have a family care experience. That's what the primary challenge is. And we haven't got enough families to care for the children that are coming into the care system. We recognise that many of those children have got some very, very challenging difficulties because of the abuse, the trauma, the separation that they've experienced. And so we recognise that, but what we still want is for those children to have a family care experience. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a rise in the number of children under 12 who have needed to be placed in residential care because we haven't been able to find a family carer. And when we look at family care, there are 3 options that we look at. One is that we always first look at a connected person to that child, and that is a duty that in law that we have to do that. So it's not that we just want to find anybody in the family. We have a duty to go and see if there's anybody that already knows that child that can look after that child if they can't be safely cared for by their birth parents. If there isn't anybody in the family willing and able and assessed as suitable, then we look at mainstream, our own mainstream foster carers. If we're not able to find anybody in our own mainstream foster care cohort families, we have to look at independent external fostering families. And we have seen a rise in the number of family members willing and able to support the children in their families, which is great. And we have a very good kinship, connected persons offer of support and financial payment that is equal to that of foster carers in Worcestershire. So we promote that, and that's working very well. But we don't have enough of our own foster carers, and our recruitment of foster carers has been lower than our loss of foster carers. The majority of foster carers that we're losing from the system are either through retirement. They have been working through foster carers for many, many years. And I think that's the primary reason that we're losing foster carers. There are other reasons, a range of reasons that we might, some of them are deregistered, and that's been initiated because of the issues or concerns with regards to their level of care they're able to offer. So deregistration of carers, and there's a process of that. So each year, some carers might be lost to that. And each year, some may just decide they don't want to do foster care anymore. They're not retiring, but retiring foster care, but they're just leaving foster care. And some may move area and go and be foster carers in a more local area, or move to an alternative employer rather than the Worcestershire Children First. But that's not the primary reason that we lose foster carers. So our reduction in foster carers overall is about the fact that we are losing more this side than are new coming into the system. And it is also true that the children that are coming into the care of the local authority is changing. So we have less babies, we have less young, easy children to care for. And some of that is about the fact that we focus very strongly and have very good support in place for families when they're experiencing difficulties. So whenever we can, we will prevent the need for children to come into the care system. So we've got a lot of support there, and that works well. But when a child does need to come into care, then we will receive them into care for their protection and their welfare. And as I said, we then automatically look to see whether we can find a family. The secondary issue that comes with that is, of course, when you've got a very limited availability of a resource, it becomes more and more and more expensive. So children's placements as a cost, and that's not just foster care, it's residential foster care placement in their entirety, has been a big financial cost to children's services within Worcestershire and nationally. So for us to look at how we can both address some of those driving costs, but also meet our aim and our value to value family care and our children in family care, we've needed to look at what can we do differently, what can we do to increase the number of foster carers that are coming into Worcestershire, and support those that are here as well to care for some of our most complex children. And we've got a range of projects that we're doing, and one of them was the introduction of the specialist foster carer. So the specialist foster carers now can earn £1,000 a week for caring for a child who has some of these very additional challenging behaviours, which are exhibited or displayed, by the child either through self-harm or violence are the primary reasons. So we've been doing some recruitment and some conversions actually of some of our foster carers to specialist foster carers. And we're going to continue with that. And Empower have a value in care approach that is we are applying to foster care, where it's really looking at how can we maximise the skills of the foster carers that we've currently got with the needs of the children that we've got, but also make sure that those coming in, again, we identify those skills that they need. And that's kind of this specific piece of work. So that's what the presentation will be about. It is a short piece of work, that doesn't make it not in depth. So Maria and the team are also going to go through, just to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing over that next 4 months before we come back and report back in September. So it's quite an in-depth piece of work for a period of a few months, and then we'll be able to come back in November and report back on how successful it's been and whether or not there is more then for us to do to have a further rollout or not.
Before we move on to the presentation, is there anything you would want to say, Councillor Guy, as it comes to us?
No, only that I think Tim has given a very, very comprehensive analysis of the problems. But those problems, which are obviously financial, are almost in abeyance to the fact that we still look for what is in the best interests of the child before we do anything else. And that's paramount. And so the valuing family care takes the precedent. But of course, also, if it works out, if we find all those foster carers that we're looking for, then our own problems can be resolved in part at least.
I'll pass it on for the presentation.
Brilliant, thanks.
That's
That's a memory. Thanks for that. I think that's a great intro summary. And good morning to you all. And just to introduce ourselves, I'm Dominic Luscombe, and as Councillor Marshall said, I lead our work on children's social care nationally. I'll let my colleague introduce himself.
Fiona Pivot, Delivery Director for Empower. I lead a number of projects and have focused specifically on fostering over the last.
And just a word on Empower as a company. So we are the largest consulting firm that's solely focused on local government. We work across local government, health, the NHS, adult social care. And I would say across all of our work, there is a focus on finding ways of improving outcomes for children and young people and individuals that can also reduce cost. And this work really fits with that very well. If you can move on to the next slide, Maria. So just to touch on the focus of this work. So we are supporting a phase of activity that runs until October. And the Empower team, myself, Fiona, and the rest of the Empower team will be working very closely with Maria and colleagues in support of the aim and objectives that Tina outlined. In terms of the scope of this activity, we're focusing on 2 key areas. So the first one is working with Maria's team to identify opportunities for more children in residential settings to transition to family placements, to foster care, as Tina described. Within this, a particular focus on better understanding and profiling the needs of children and young people, but also the confidence and capability of foster carers to meet those needs. And that's using our value and care approach, which is a proprietary methodology, but also using strength-based approaches and practice and thinking to support that matching and that support. And the second strand of work, again, is working with Maria and her team around building on the existing strengths to really further develop and strengthen and support the existing approach to foster care recruitment and retention. And within that draws on, we've worked for over 20 years to support activity around foster care recruitment and retention. And it draws on our what we call our family values approach, which really focuses on the values of the prospective carers that we're targeting in terms of the messaging and in terms of how we reach prospective carers, but also focuses on utilising existing foster care networks and local targeted word of mouth campaigns alongside some of the media and digital approaches that you'll be familiar with. And the approach also uses a campaigning methodology. So really focusing on capturing the impact of activity and equipping foster carers with the right tools and materials to actually go out and recruit within their networks. Can you move on to the next slide, Maria? So as I mentioned, the approach to matching foster carers and children and young people draws on our value and care approach. And just to describe this in a bit more detail. So this is an approach to capturing the needs of children and young people, which we've developed with a number of local authorities in recent years. And at the child level, it captures the holistic needs of a child or young person, and then allows us to track how this changes over time. And then that information can be used to inform practice and commissioning. For example, it can be part of home finding, it can be part of reviewing care and support for children and young people, and in this instance, it can be used to actually look at the needs of children and young people versus the competence and skills of foster carers. But at a cohort level, it also allows local authorities and partners to better understand and respond to the needs of children and young people. So, for example, we've worked with a number of authorities to apply this to US cohorts, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, different age groups, children in certain forms of provision. So, for example, children in residential provision, and in some authorities, it's been applied across the whole care population. So, for a number of authorities, it's been rolled out for all of those children who are looked after. We've worked with around 15 local authorities to use and apply value and care in different ways. In the last couple of years, more focus has been on fostering and the application that we've described and which Tina touched on. I'm going to pass over to Fiona just to talk a little bit more about actually how we're applying this to fostering.
Thanks, John. So to bring to life how value and care can be applied within fostering and key focus of our support over the coming months. So value and care can be applied to better support carer matching, utilisation and placement stability by identifying the strengths and capabilities of foster carers. So it focuses on applying a strengths-based approach, thinking about actually what are the skills and capabilities across 13 key domains. And I'll go on to show you a view of what the tool looks like, but matching that to the needs of the children and young people. It's developed through a conversation with the foster carer and their social worker, and that's a really core part of it. So it's an approach and a tool, but a tool that can be live and can be used regularly to support the development of foster carers. So it informs and supports matching, it informs and supports individual development areas and development programmes, and at a cohort level, so within this first phase of support, we're looking at 40 to 50 foster care profiles, so that's our aim. We can start to think about actually where are the areas for development across that cohort so it can inform ongoing learning and development. We can move on to the next slide. So just to bring to life what that looks like, so here you've got a copy of a value and care profile. It has two lines on it. So the pink line is the foster carers' skills and capabilities, and the purple line, the inner line, is the child and young person's needs. So what enables us to do is create a picture of those needs and those strengths and understand how that foster carer can best support the young person. As I said, there are 13 domains within that. Sitting behind this is a tool, a value and care tool. It has a number of questions that a social worker would work through in conversation with their foster carer and focusing on strengths and capabilities. And to be able to create a visual representation and picture of those needs. Now, it may be a case where there isn't a match between those two, but it enables us to then identify where there might be areas for development. And you can see this change over time, as John talked about. The feedback that we've had where we've applied this in other areas and working with fostering teams and foster carers has highlighted how it's enabled the conversation between the foster carer and the social worker to focus on their strengths and capabilities and get to know one another and to think about those individual development plans. It also enables the foster carer to have that record to focus on their strengths, to celebrate their strengths as well, and to think about their own development needs. You can move on to the next slide. So again, just bringing that to life in more detail. So this is an example of impact from another area that we've been working with. So you can see here again, the value and care profile that looks at the needs of the child and young person, the value and care domains. and the strengths of that foster carer. So this was a young person who was in a residential placement. Through the completion of their valuing care tool with their child social worker, they were able to identify the opportunity for a step down from residential to fostering. And then through the completion of valuing care tools for foster carers, to be able to match the needs of the child and young person to the strengths and capabilities of the foster carer. So this did result in a step down and a match, which has resulted in a financial saving of around 200k in their lives. So hopefully that brings to life what the valuing care tool looks and feels like, but also the impact that can be achieved.
Thank you, Fiona. And so we're very happy to take any questions. There are also some reports in the public domain that we can circulate, which give a bit more information and background to some of this work, if that's of interest.
Yeah, really interesting. Really, not one question, so we'll let them out. Randy,
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about one of the areas that the in working with different local authorities and things like that. Could you tell us the last one of those that you read? How many extra families did you recruit foster parents? Because that's that's one of the key things that we talk about. Like you trying to match up both. You say, I just really want the background for your last authority.
So I think if it's helpful, I need to take that away. But in terms of the numbers and stats and in relation to different authorities we've worked with, I'd be very happy to come back on that and share that.
You wouldn't mind, because I think it's interesting, because as I say, it's a case of trying to match everybody up. You said, I was looking for some background information about where you work.
Yeah, I mean, I can say we're working with Telford and Wrekin at the moment.
Yep.
We're also in the region. We're also working with Walsall. In terms of this sort of work focused on fostering, we've worked extensively with the likes of Norfolk, Hertfordshire, and Oxfordshire. And so quite a broad kind of local authorities. But in terms of the specific information around impact and number of foster carers recruited, etc., I would need to come back to you. I'm very happy to do that separately.
Send some information.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for that. It's really interesting. I suppose my concern is what the Tina raised at the start of we are lacking foster carers. So matching foster carers to children makes perfect sense, but eventually we're going to run out of foster carers. So is it how it's like, this is great, but then you could be left with lots of foster carers on the other end, lots of children with no foster care go to. So I suppose it's coming back to how do we solve that problem of just getting more foster carers.
So one part of the work and support is around the matching. The second part is absolutely focused on that recruitment of foster carers. And within that recruitment, thinking about the whole fostering journey. So from the attracting effective foster carers through the assessment process and then through to the matching and support ongoing. I think just to share with one local authority that we recently worked with through that support, looking at the recruitment, but also through supporting the assessment process, they saw a 73% increase in the number of foster carers recruited compared to the previous year. Tom, I don't know if you want to talk about the family values in a bit more detail, but it is around thinking about creatively how you attract and recruit new foster carers. And some of that is around actually thinking about your foster carer network as an opportunity to bring others in. So through word of mouth campaigns, as an example.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, I touched on it previously. I think building on the work that we're already doing and the team are already doing, in terms of that we have seen opportunities to really strengthen recruitment and also the conversion of inquiries through to approved foster carers. And that is really through that focus on values, through the focus on utilising existing foster carers and their networks, through using a really targeted and focused campaigns locally, which target the sort of prospective foster carers that we're looking to reach. And we have seen some significant impacts in other authorities, as Fiona mentioned. But as I said, we can share a bit more information on that as well.
If you indicated you wanted to put this space, that would.
I'd like to ask a question if I may at some stage. Yeah.
I think we have before, or I could see whichever.
No, yeah, that's fine. If you want to come in now.
Yeah,
then
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
go to mine.
So as I was saying, you know, what we want Empower to do is to bring this some independent scrutiny, challenge, added value to what we're already doing. So when we introduced the specialist foster carers last year, we've already, without using the tool, matched 7 of our own foster carers to children who have either stepped down from residential, or we have prevented them going, young children prevented them going into residential where we know they would have gone into residential before. And I'll let Christy really annualise saying that that's achieved, so that I make sure.
Yes, so instead, I'm not on the stream, so I'm voice coming in. So, yeah, so the 3 children that we've been placed have actually stepped down from residential placement into a super foster carers, annual saving of just over 800,000 just from 3 children. And the 4 placements that we made that Secretary alluded to are an alternative to new entrants into residential care. Our average rest costs at the moment, that would save around just over 700,000. So just from 7 children, it's really reduced what would have been our spend in this now financially that we're in 1.5 million.
And what we've done is we focused first on the growth of children under 12 that were going into residential or are in residential. We've still got more children in that cohort we would like to move back step down into family care. And we've then identified children who are between 12 and 15. Because we want them in family care as well, just because they're 12, 13, 14, 15, they're still too old to be, too young, sorry, to be in a residential setting on a long-term permanent basis. So we're trying to look at that cohort, and that's the cohort we're particularly going to focus on with Empower. Because as Dominic said, what we know is that sometimes it's the confidence of the carers to care for the children, and when they're exhibiting very self-harm behaviours, as well as violent behaviours. And that's a frightening prospect to have a child that's got that level of need in your home. So it is about really emphasising to those carers what skills they've got and giving them more confidence, as well as then matching them to the children, and that the children don't become labelled as, you know, violent child or self-harming child, but actually we understand what the behaviours are, what the triggers are, and really importantly, how we can manage those children's behaviours. And if you match those 2 things, the skill of the carer, the confidence to understand that these behaviours, although they're very frightening to see on paper, actually they can be managed. That's when you've got the sweet spot in terms of being able to move children and set them down to a family placement. So we've already started this work ourselves, and say we've already identified the carers, 7 carers, and move those children to be sent. But we want to do more, and that's where we've got Empower. There are 2 other pieces of work though that we're doing, of which we've got to do a short overview that's going to give you in a second. Where we've been working with the DLB to review how we've been marketing and trying to recruit. So we're going to do a little bit of an overview of what that's done, and then the plan is that when we come back in September, I think it's the scrutiny, if we can give an update on both of these pieces of work together.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good morning, everyone. I've got a comment first, then a question if I can. I think it's a really, really important and valuable exercise by Empower. Absolutely get and understand the strategy, and I think having that independent view will certainly add value to the current fosterers already in the system. You know, having sort of that skills matrix to, you know, identify and understand the skills of the fosterers, and then identifying any weaknesses or areas where they need additional support, understanding, you know, and uplifting their skills I think will certainly add value. My question is on about recruitment, because absolutely get the where we need to go to getting more fosterers in the system, and retention is everything. But it's just a bit of context really, is how do we compare in Worcestershire vis-a-vis our neighbours and say the national trend as well, in terms of, I don't know what the scoring system is, whether it's fosterers per 100,000 or what have you, but there's got to be some way of understanding the context of Worcestershire, because I probably guess we're no different to our neighbours. And then my follow-up question to that is, how does our financial package compare to other neighbours and maybe the national level? And as Chris absolutely spot on says, getting the children out of the residential and into foster care, for their own betterment, but also the financial savings are huge. Is there any scope? Do we have scope and flexibility, whatever our financial package is? And I don't know, and I'm sure you'll tell us how that compares. If there's any scope to uplift that to make it more attractive, because obviously the benefit of uplifting the savings will obviously outweigh those going to residential. So do we have any scope then to uplift and make Worcestershire more attractive for foster?
Okay. So in terms of the comparative data, we can get data on the number of inquiries that people made to become a foster carer, the number of inquiries then that convert to those people that then want to undertake the assessment, and then at the end of the assessment, those that then get approved as foster carers. So they're the key statistical KPIs that we will be able to compare nationally. And previously we have done well or on par. We have seen a change in that this year. And that, I think, adds to your second point, which is the financial package. So we measure ourselves against the national recommended payment for foster carers, and we're always in line with that. Last year, I think it was time flies, wasn't it? It could have been 18 months ago, certainly last year. We increased our foster care payments for those carers who were caring for children who were aged 11 plus, because we recognise that they were a particularly difficult group of children to place and care for. So all of our foster carers got a 2% uplift, and those particular carers got an additional 2% uplift, so they got a 4% uplift. So the last time we compared across the region and with our statistical neighbours, we were sort of on par. We have done that recently, and we can see that actually it looks like in this financial year, our statistical neighbours have risen even more. So we're now not on par. So whilst we are seeing some good response from inquiries, going up, we can see we've done, a whole recruitment drive. Our conversions to those wanting to be carers has dropped slightly, which is a concern. It is important though that we understand why they haven't gone into the assessment, and whether they have, and not assume that they haven't gone into an assessment because they have gone into the assessment with somebody else, or they haven't gone into an assessment because once they understand the challenges and what they need to do, actually they've said, no, we're not interested, which is why the 3 KPIs are really important to understand together. And Maria's doing some work now on our statistical neighbours and our regional statistical neighbours, because they're the ones to compare with. Who are our geographical neighbours? So we've got, we compete with Gloucestershire and Herefordshire, they're our and Warwickshire, they're our geographical neighbours. Warwickshire are also our statistical neighbours. So Maria's doing that work to just see where we compare on price, but also where we compare on those 3 KPIs, and that will bring back in September. Okay. But we do know that this year we have seen a bit of a decrease in that. Now, the conversion rate, just to complicate it a little bit, I know that you follow this brilliantly, is because our inquiries have gone up, our conversion rates, they have come down because a lot of people are interested. But once they understand what the assessment process entails, and I have to remind people that this is not a Worcestershire assessment process, it is legislation. And it is true to say it can feel like extremely intrusive legislation requirement to assess you. But as you can understand, we are giving these people very vulnerable children. And I think I said before, oh no, I didn't have it at the event, but you know, it's a frightening thing to think about, but I've worked in safeguarding for 35 years, so it's always in my mind that, you know, it will attract people who are not coming into to be a foster carer for the best intentions. And so we absolutely have to make sure we're doing proper assessments. And equally, if we're not honest about the children and the needs of these children, all that happens is that we approve foster carers who then don't care for the children, or it breaks down.
Yeah.
So it is an intense process. It is intrusive, but it's important that we get it right. So we're monitoring all the time and comparing, you know, if we've done a radio advert, we've seen rises that go up from radio adverts. That's great, but we need to then compare that to inquiries, to conversion. It's no good at the whole of Worcestershire going, oh, look at me, I'd like to be a foster carer. And then once they find out what family goes through, going, no, thanks, I won't bother. So we're very clear on those KPIs, but you're right to ask those questions. And we keep monitoring that. We know that we are not financially competitive following this year and the rises that other people have made. So it will be a recommendation that we'll be looking to come back to.
Steve, can I come across to you first?
Yeah, thank you. Hold on.
Hello.
In some ways, the part of the question's already been answered from Nathan's point of view, but just wondering how different are we in our methods of recruitment and particularly retention from the independent fostering agencies that are going on and basically competing, I suppose is the best word.
I suppose, I mean, I think we can give some of the work that the DFE did, that was their focus, reviewing what's our approach and what have they seen across all the other local authorities we've done. And actually, we came out very favourably in that. We haven't had the report yet, but Maria, if we go through the presentation, can give you some headlines of that. We are waiting for a report, but it was a very positive feedback in terms of the processes we do. That said, we are a local authority and we're not a private business. And for private businesses who are profit makers, of course, they are going to invest a lot of money in their marketing, And we have a finite budget.
Yeah.
And so, but looking at how we use that budget, it is something that we are absolutely doing. But in terms of our strategy, our marketing, we have positive feedback in terms of things that we do.
Yeah.
We do a whole project.
I just think it's worth bearing in mind what Empower are trying to do for us as a local authority. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, we are, and Empower have been very good because we've been very clear. I know that you know, in terms of we're not working with Empower for this short period of time to repeat what the DFE have just done. You know, we've got these two pieces of work, and we will be focusing on absolutely competence, skills matching, identifying children, matching them, moving them. That's the ultimate outcome. And the second ultimate outcome is increasing the number of carers that we can recruit, and some of that will come out of the work that we've done with the DFE.
Much of the time, we're going to ask for this the first, the next, if that's okay. We've had the next presentation and then question. Is that okay? Which one?
Okay, but I just look at the item we're talking about on the screen, just.
That's fine. Shall we just quickly answer that? I have got one. Yes, sorry. I have got one quick question, which was, at the moment, of course, you're looking to try and get children out of residential. What would you look at, say, for example, a child's gone into a foster situation, the child's needs no longer match. So we've got foster parents who, in that map, would be right out there because they've got all of these skills, but now the child
now doesn't need all those skills, would you then consider moving that child free of that high needs place?
Well, that's a really good question, Emma, because the simple answer is no, because we have to be child first. And so it is really important that when we've got children that are in family arrangements and they are settled and they are progressing really, really well, we can't go, oh, you're doing all right now, it's another family. We don't do that. It's different when we're looking at residential, because if they're progressing well in residential, we know it is absolutely not in their interest to stay long-term in residential. However good that residential is, unless you've got a child with disability, then it is particularly extreme disabilities, and that residential setting cannot be met within a home environment. We would want to move those children into families. So, but for children in residential, we know that the outcomes for those children, it's institutionalised within, however good it is, and so we want them back in families. But what that comes with is lots of anxieties around people, particularly when those children are settled. So we've got a 12-year-old at the moment, for example, who has been in residential care for 2 years, and he seemingly is very settled, but he's 12. Now, you ask me, do I want a 12-year-old when he's 13, 14, 15 in residential? No, I don't, because he might be settled now, but the chances are he is going to be unsettled and certainly open to way more changes in his life that may have a negative impact when he gets to 13, 14, 15, because we can't control the other children that are going to be residing with him. So we want him in a family. His family are obviously anxious about that because they see him as very settled and wanting to stay in residential, but they see that as the status quo. So we're having to work with that to try and engage, and obviously that influences the young person's view. And he's 12, so he doesn't want to move to a family because his family don't want him to move to a family. And so it's a very complex business, but we would only move children primarily if we absolutely believe it's in their best interest. So you're right, for our specialist carers, we've been clear that we're not going to either reduce your money because the child is doing well in your care once they start doing well, or move them from your care. We're committing to that permanency for as long as that child remains in that care.
I'd be agree to that, thank you. But we have a quick question on this one.
I only do it, and it's, when we're talking about, it came up on the finance, but it talks about, we've seen the last paragraph there, and it talks about the cost of residential placement compared to fostering. And Chris mentioned it too as well. Well, I just wanted to be clear, the money that's saved from residential to fostering, is that reinvested in back in services? Or is reinvested back in services or not?
It's not reinvested because we've got overspend, a significant overspend. So it goes into bringing down the overspend.
So the outcome of theirs and what Chris mentioned,
It means we won't be.
It won't be
We won't be
reinvested.
into a 20 million overspend at the end of this year. We have.
So it won't be £1 million overspend, it'd be £200,000 overspend. I don't want to cut that.
Yeah.
That makes it difficult. Charging the side or whatever.
But I'm looking forward to hearing all about the DFE project here. So we're going to go slightly over on the side, but it's quite an important subject. So. I don't I got the answer. I don't stick to time when we've got to be on important to. Maybe not 4.5 hours.
I was about to say you have been toward it, have you? We don't seem to time.
Just as Nathan here.
It's just me.
You're in as well.
These are much quicker slides, so.
No, it's fine.
The audit agenda was only 2 pages.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the DFO project really much, so this is just the empower implementation.
Honestly, it's fine. We all know it's right.
Okay, so just following on from Dominic and Fiona in terms of steps. We had our initial meeting, what we've done now is we arranged the Empower Family and Care Staff Workshop. So that's our fostering social workers, our fostering team managers, and our children's social workers all coming together to meet with Empower so they can go talk to them about the Family and Care tool and completing their profiles of both foster carers and of the children. So we've also set up a couple of online drop-in sessions with Empower. So while social workers are completing their profiles of both foster carers and children, they'll have those opportunities to attend those sessions. Any questions that they might have about the profiles that they completed. We aim to have all of the profiles completed by the end of June. Empower will then do their value and care profiles and the analysis of that, and that will take place between the 1st and 14th of July. And then we'll start to progress identified matches and what support our carers and children are going to need, and that will take place between 16th of July and throughout August. Matching children during August, and then moving children to new identified placements from August through to December. So that's the timeline that we're working to in terms of the project. So as Tina said, we did engage with the Foster Link programme. So the Foster Link programme is a new diagnostic service to support local authorities, particularly in relation to recruitment and approval, and it's funded by the DfE. So we made contact with them. We're lucky enough to get placed on that project. And the aim is to provide that additional support to local authorities to help us boost foster care recruitment and approvals, and to facilitate the sharing of practice nationally. So the Foster Link are going into lots of different local authorities, so they're able, when they came to us, to share best practice and ideas that was working in other local authorities. So they undertook a diagnostic, and our diagnostics took place between the 9th and 10th of April. They were here for 2 days, and met with social workers, managers, and met with our ADMs. So right through the foster care journey. The programme itself, we get a Foster Link advisor. They work with us to examine our current processes. We provide our data, and to identify those areas that we can improve on. That support will last for 12 months, and then in year 2, they will also continue to support us, and including sharing the best practice. So we had some initial feedback. We're still waiting for the final report. What they will do is they'll share the initial report with us, and then we can look at that and review it and make any changes in terms of that. We can do that. So the initial feedback was really positive. We had good feedback about how our recruitment, foster recruitment project is being set up, and the staffing complement in relation to our recruitment hub. So we have a recruitment manager. We also had a dedicated BSO, a social worker within that hub. And she saw real positives in that approach, and there was a consistency, and she kind of compared that to the local authorities she's been into. It's been a positive for us. She read through a number of our fostering assessments. She found those to be thorough and of good quality, and gave some really good feedback on the assessments that she read. What she was saying is that our foster carers, she spoke to a number of our foster carers, and also foster carers who were new to our fostering service and were just going through that assessment process, or just been approved. And what they were telling her is that they had a really good recruitment journey. They liked the fact that we are a fostering community. They feel a sense of, I think one of the foster carers said, we feel part of the family. and certainly part of a community. And foster links like that was really well embedded into our recruitment approach. Foster carers, so they were positive about their relationships with their social workers, and that was a real strength in terms of that relationship-based practice. Felt that social workers regularly kept in touch, and that as a service, they knew what was going on in the fostering service, and they had a good experience. Fostering were really positive about our fostering panel, good area of practice, particularly our quality assurance in relation to panel and the role of our panel advisor. And again, said that the practice that she saw here was some of the best that she'd seen, and felt that would be a strength to share with other local authorities. She did talk about and notice that Worcestershire ourselves, we were experiencing similar challenges to other local authorities in terms of recruiting. So what we were facing wasn't something completely different to what she was seeing in other local authorities. And the vulnerability that she shared with us verbally was one around the size of our county and how that equates to our marketing activity and how we can get our message out there to the different communities and how we can get different communities to engage with us. And also recently our recruitment manager has gone on maternity leave, so we had a vacancy there. So at that point she felt that was a vulnerability for us, but we have recently recruited for that post. And positively, the person we recruited was a ex-foster carer for Worcestershire, so she was going to bring a lot of knowledge to that post. So some really good feedback initially, so we're just waiting for the final report and any recommendations that we were happy to kind of take on to improve that knowledge. I just give you a little bit of an overview in terms of specialist foster care. Tina has already mentioned this on LinkedIn. Absolutely, it's focusing on valuing family life and the importance of providing our children with family care and family care placements. And with specialist foster care, we kind of recognise that there are some children who are stepping out from residential care will need that extra special care, and that's where the specialist foster care comes from. So we launched in November of last year. The criteria is we're focusing on those children who are aged 5 to 18, but as Tina talked about, we have 2 cohorts of children that we're looking at, those under 12 who are in residential care and those 12 to 15 age group, and again obviously crossover with Empower in relation to. So just to give you some achievements in terms of the specialist foster care. So since our launch in November, we've had 15 inquiries. 8 of those were from internal foster care and 7 from external inquiries. We now have 7 of our internal foster carers who have been approved as specialist foster carers. 6 of those carers have children placed with them, and 7 have a proposed match, and moving day is imminent during June and early stages of July. As Chris mentioned earlier on, we've got 3 children who are under 12 who have stepped out from residential care, been placed in care placements, and 4 children who were placed with specialist foster carers to avoid residential care. And in addition, we have 1 active assessment, 1 live inquiry as we speak. We've had a couple who have withdrawn, and the reasons for those withdrawals are, one of them was bereavement in the family, so it wasn't the right time for them, and the other one was one of the carers had recently changed jobs and they wanted that to kind of settle down before they moved on. But we've got agreement from them to retain their information, and we will go back to them at a later date. So that's the kind of summary of where where we are in terms of specialist aftercare. I think that is the.
That's fantastic. First thing I'm going to say though, can we get some comms out on that result of the DFE, those positive news stories?
Final report.
Final report.
Yeah.
Because, but when you're going to go for something, having that actually it's part, it feels like a part of a family, is really reassuring. You want to know that you're not going to feel.
Yeah.
And we obviously use all of that kind of thing as part of our recruitment campaigns as well. So, yeah.
And the other thing was, is there a recruitment reward for firms? So say if there's a financial reward.
Yes, there is up to about £1,000. So if you like refer a friend, you will get a payment of £250. If that person then goes on to be assessed and approved, you will get a further £7.
But you were first.
A couple of hopefully fairly brief questions. First on the DFB one, you mentioned the size of the county as an issue. Just wondering what the issue, the size of the county, is it too big, too small?
Big.
Too big, just geographically. big
Just
rather than
geographically.
population.
Big. And what we were talking about when she was here is we are lucky enough to have access to the bus. So that double-decker bus where we can, and we've been using that to get further afield, so within Worcestershire. So we'll kind of drive, the bus will drive out, we'll have our staff on there. We've got a couple of foster carers who will go on the bus as well. We've got all of our banners and trying to attract people. Over the top. With music. It's going to be better in the good way.
Okay, so that's fine, that's cool. And the other one, just about the whole kind of big power timescales. Obviously, you're saying you can do these and kind of by December it was matched. And then I take it you'll be off somewhere else and account. How does it work in the future? Can we just, now we've learned how to do this matching, we can then just carry it on ourselves in power not involved? Is that how it works? Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm reading this work. When you were talking about the initial feedback, that you talked about, which I'm trying to engage you where I'm on, is why you needed the feedback to say we needed an extra manager or BSO as well. Didn't we know that before or what?
We have those posts. I think the challenge was when Karen came from Boston to do the diagnostic, we had just lost the manager who had gone on maternity leave. So absolutely we got alternative provisions in place. But it was early days and you could see it was different when Alison Ainsworth was here. She was very much the recruitment manager and kind of managed that recruitment hub without appointing to that post. So it's kind of a different, we're in a different stage now because we're now appointed to that gap.
So when she comes back on maternity leave, that I presume she'll go back into post then?
Yeah.
So we're on 2 managers then?
No, because we've got temporary.
The feedback from the DFE was just to say, this post has worked really well, so make sure you do cover it while you're gone. Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just make a quick comment there, Madam Chair? This of course is such a truly challenging area to be dealing with some of our most vulnerable children. But this morning I think has been such a positive morning, such a proactive approach. And I just congratulate our own team and the work they're doing with NPOWER. And I, for one, am certainly looking forward to September and to hear the feedback of what is, what has become. So thank you all very much indeed.
On the words out of my mouth there, and say thank you. If there's no more questions, I do say that.
I was just to say, you did agree as part of the scrutiny programme to come back in September. We did that when we've been slightly delayed on starting the Empower work, haven't we, for the reasons that we don't need to go into now. And I just wonder whether September might be a little bit early, given the timetable that we've just shown, and whether we would be better to come back in the
December or a November meeting. Yeah, a November meeting, I think would be better because we're not going to have quite completed the work. But it's going to be an interim bit, whereas in November, we'll be able to give you the full outcome. Is that right?
Fine, sort it in a more, but. Yeah, exactly, as, this is an extremely important scrutiny. We have got children in this camp who are in need, and that's, finances are important, but only in so much as we can make sure it's a sustainable service. I really think children to positive family environments. So I look forward to go to move on to the next. Without you, unfortunately. Morning off. I'm talking over that. There's no advice on the post here, so, How about the keeper?
You mentioned the voice on, can you? So that's about the Vietnam couple.
Yeah. That's me. People, I'm here. Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much. Just to let the newcomers know, we are recording this meeting. It will be up online after. It's not being live broadcast, but it will be going up. I am Anna Marshall, so those who have worked on the chair, I've got joining me on the chair, and we've also got new on the panel. So a few new faces, but we're all very eager to get stuff right in. And so in attendance for this item, which is careers in advice high school, Judy Gibbs, head of skills and investments, Hannah Parrott, the assistant director of communities, Matt Toad, inspiring Worcestershire programme, Daniel Gregg, who's group manager of Worcestershire performance of welcome all. Who I straight to Julie. Straight to Julie. Brilliant. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, I'm Judy Gibbs and I work in People Directorate and I lead on skills and investment. And our Inspiring Worcestershire programme, or our Careers and Enterprise Company programme, is one of the strands that Matt leads on within my team. So it's worth saying that when this first came about, this agenda for the local authorities, this is actually a local enterprise partnership agenda. So this is something that is contracted into a local enterprise partnership. But as Matt and I have always sat in the local authority since day one, of being here and delivered this agenda for the local enterprise partnership. I have a wider role within the local enterprise partnership in that I'm the director of skills, so I look at the needs of employers now and moving forward, and of course, future workforce, and therefore the careers advice that give by young people in high schools is a quite clear link to that. So, our role, essentially, we are not here, and our role is not to give individuals within high schools careers advice. That's not what our role is. That is very much defined by the Department of Education as the school's responsibility. Our role is to provide advice and to guide them around a structured framework that they implement and to resource that for them, so to add resources into the mix, to put on events, to bring employers forward, and to some extent, quality assure the work. Although, as I say, we don't do it, we advise them, we guide them. They have a responsibility through Ofsted, but that is of more recent times. And there also is a legislative, which let me say that word, element which is called the provider access legislation that came in later this year that I'll explain in a bit. So I'm not going to go through all the history, but just to kind of say we've been doing this work since 2015 under its current format, so working with the Careers and Enterprise Company. Careers and Enterprise Company is it's a separate organisation that has a contract with the Department of Education that has embedded this agenda into the 38 LEP areas over the years, essentially. So what this looks like is, so there's a framework, and the framework is called the Gatsby benchmarks, and there are 8 Gatsby benchmarks, and they focus on different elements. So they look at things like, does the school have a plan for careers education? But then they also go right down to, are they ensuring that the overwhelming majority of young people receive individualised advice and guidance, as well as are they getting the number of employer encounters we would like them to have? There is a direct correlation between the number of employer encounters that a young person receives and their likelihood of becoming not in education, employment and training at the point in time. So what we do is we essentially, when we started this work, our kind of way of embedding this was that what the government wanted to do is they wanted to have an employer advisor that worked with schools called an enterprise advisor, and that individual would open up their network to that school in order to get more employer encounters. That's how it all started, and that's what our remit was. It was about how do we bring employers into this mix? How do we get employers to be able to offer the kind of things that actually will be really useful? So not the typical work experience that we will all remember of, let's go into a business environment, let's make the tea, let's do photocopying, actually things that really make a difference in terms of influencing that young person to enter those industries. So that's where we started. And for the first few years, that was pretty much what we had to do. Schools didn't have to participate, it was on a voluntary basis, but that's where we were. And then things changed in 2017 because the Department of Education published its careers strategy. Hasn't been refreshed since then, but it's worth saying it's going to be refreshed this summer. And in that, what it says, it defined the role of a school and said to a school, you must. And therefore, that's when the Ofsted piece started to come in as well. So in 2017, we took a decision. So what they wanted to do at that point is they wanted to implement a hub model, and they wanted to implement that in a number of geographies across the country. We applied to be one of those geographies. In all intents and purposes, we had no right to get that work, because actually what they were looking for is those areas that were most deprived, that really needed extra support to move this forward. Worcestershire couldn't really fight that case, because although we have lots of areas of social mobility within the county, if you put that in a comparison to another geography, the argument just wasn't there. So what we decided to do was to do something completely different. They were asking for 20 schools to join the hub to really proactively do this work. We thought, okay, what we're going to do, and our model was we would put every school in it from day one. So our model was we would go to special educational needs schools, we would use our AP schools, our pupil referral units and the further education colleges, and we would put every single one into hub from day one. They only wanted 20 schools, so we were going in with 42, so it was something quite different, and we were successful. I think at the time their thinking was, okay, we'll try all this because actually this is where we want to go. We want full country coverage. So actually, if we can see this across an area, that would be really interesting to us. So that's where we went. When we started as well, as we're saying, in 2018, when they did kind of all the data piece on this, Worcestershire was in the bottom 3 or 4 areas in terms of where it was. It was seen as a real cold spot. Our work experience levels were really low. Our employee county levels were really low. Worcestershire was in the bottom 3 at 38 areas. We then took this a step further. So actually, because we had that 2-tier, 3-tier system in some of our districts, actually what we knew is that young people were there in Wychavon and they were in middle school, weren't getting the same experience and the same career journey that a young person in secondary school in Worcester was getting. So we applied for some further money to test the middle school piece, further money to test the middle school piece, and we were given a further hub. So we then moved 21 further schools into our hub. Actually, what that looks like now is that we work with 62 educational establishments. So we have full county coverage, all 62 schools, post year 7, all the way up to year 13, including IFD, are involved in this, and we work with them on a regular basis. Our contracts worth about 250,000, and the county council match funds some of that. We have to do that so that they're passed to match fund that, and that's done through the county council, so we're using the base budget to match fund that. Today, where we are is that we still have enterprise advisors working in our schools. We have about 85 enterprise advisors, and we have about 200 employers that we work with at any one time. We do an annual exercise to look through our employers, check the still interested, check they're still keen to work with us, and we all the time we work with the Worcestershire Growth Hub to bring on new employers all the time. So in terms of that mainstream role, so the supporting role, helping the schools to kind of implement that framework, we also have a number of things that sit alongside that we've done over and above that. So we could have just done that, but we've been more than happy just to do that, but obviously we've done some additional pieces of work. So a number of those actually support Tina's area, support the children's piece. We've been really keen to ensure that we support those young people with most disadvantage. So one of those last year was that we looked at kind of the system around how we identify young people who are most at risk of becoming not in education, employment and training. The framework that we use for that is called the risk of need indicator, hadn't been updated in Worcestershire. This is not abnormal, this is kind of how it is everywhere. Hadn't been updated for about 15 years. So the determinants that it was using were perhaps a little bit out of date. And actually we were able to use not only have a fresh look at those determinants, but working with the schools, working with Tina's team, able to really think about what are the different factors that ensure that are likely to cause a young person to become neat. And therefore, how do we ensure that our schools target those young people to ensure they're getting them the most support that they can to know our results. That's been really successful. The schools have really welcomed that piece of work. It is enabling them to focus their limited resources. But also what's interesting about that is that's been rolled out nationally based on where Worcester support the work that Worcestershire has done, and other areas are now benefiting from that. We've also done lots of other pieces of work. Things like, for instance, working with a virtual school around their personal education plans. Similarly with the SEND team as well, looking at how careers education or careers is talked about as part of those processes and not just education, because education doesn't always lead to careers in the nicest way possible. If you don't pick the right education choices, it can limit where you go. So we want to make sure those conversations are had and that they're had at an earlier point. We've also done a lot of work with those individuals within the schools who represent young people in social care, who represent young people with SEND needs, to ensure that they understand the support they should be having from their school for those young people around careers education. Because again, those schools are huge places, they have hundreds of staff, and actually you're assuming that the two talk, and that's not necessarily the case. And we have a number of best practice forums that we have in place to support those individuals. Then we have an events programme, so we run lots of different events, but I suppose our biggest event is our Worcestershire Skills Show. So Worcestershire Skills Show this year, it was the first one that we ran since 2020. Second one, sorry, that we ran since 2020. And it was a 2-day event, and over the 2 days we had 3,965 very specific young people attend from 28 schools. And then alongside that, we work with the NEET team to kind of, the post-16 NEET team, to look at those young people who don't have destination in year 11 and those young people who are likely to fall off our kind of NEET radar in year 13, to look at how we support them as well and how we work with the schools to ensure, it's almost like a challenge role that we're saying, what do you do to support these young people? I think this is probably the point to talk about the data. So where are we now? As I said, we were in the bottom three, but the great news is that we're in the top three, and we consistently have been for probably the last 4 years. We are recognised as the area that has travelled the most distance on this agenda. Yeah, no one's probably going to change that for a significant amount of time. And I think more prevalently for me, one of the most important factors is the work experience element. I'm not going to say it's all perfect, but essentially in years 10 and 12, last academic year, 92% of all young people received an employer encounter. So it's not just work experience, it's an employer encounter. That can be a number of different things, from an employer going into a school, from having a visit to an employer premises, events, etc., which equates to 7,070 young people receiving that support. And benchmarks were at 6.53. That's not going to mean a lot to you, but 6.53 out of 8. Nationally, the average is 5.3, so we're rising over and above that. Alongside that piece of work, we have a number of, I call the jigsaw pieces of the puzzle, really, that we kind of put together to make this piece of work work. So we have a primary school careers programme. We've taken that a little bit further this year. So we've been doing primary school STEM competition for about, I'd say about 7 years. And alongside that, we now have a number of other pieces of work. So we want to ensure that actually careers isn't something that's new to these young people when they transition into middle school, but also if we can get quite a lot of data from understanding young people's aspirations in primary school, in how we then put together our limited resources and what we then focus on when they move into that middle secondary point as well. We're also doing a lot of work to influence the system, so teacher encounters. We're doing a lot, the journey of a teacher is typically that they, obviously decide they're going to teach, they go to university and then go back to school. They've never worked in an industry, they don't understand that mechanism. Apprenticeships are completely foreign to them. So actually we're doing a lot of work to get teachers back into those environments, to talk to teachers about the different pathways they can take moving forward. And then we do a lot of work with employers. So, Dan's a really great example of that. Children's Work have wholly embraced wanting to do more to look at their future workforce, wanting to work with schools. So we work with employers to look at how that could look, how they would make the best of the interventions that they're trying to embed, and then we support them to get those into schools to work with their local schools. As I said, within Skills Investment, we also have a number of other programmes that kind of complement this programme that I talked about in the paper, so I'm not going to have to go over those. For us, moving forward over the next 12 months, where we are now, it's a funny period of time, obviously, with potential election looming. Where we are at the moment is we have a new contract that comes in August, September, and that's an 18-month contract. That's quite a new thing for us. We normally have 12-month contracts. I'm not quite sure why it's an 18-month, but it is. And our focus is very much about, it's beyond the benchmark. So we will continue to do what we do. We will do all the things we've just talked about, but we're also going to take a real focus this year on looking at the quality of interventions and ensuring that those interventions, when they happen, we're getting the most out of them. So we'll do things like we will support our employers to really understand the interactions that they're having, how to make them have the greatest impact from what we know, from what the countrywide research says. And again, we will look at our own quality within our careers hub, but also we're going to push our schools who've been doing this for quite a time now to actually look at, are they implementing a similar programme, or actually are they taking it to the next step? So there's a quality piece there. Challenges in this agenda, I've said it a couple of times, it's limited. We have limited resource. So actually what we can do, what schools can do is really limited, and in a very busy agenda in schools. How much time this is given is often due to the passion of that particular head teacher. We have some schools who talk to us who are really passionate about it, and other schools who, they think the opposite, frankly. And a lot of that obviously comes down to all the factors you recognise, time, money and policy being one of them. There is also a real lack of careers advisors within the UK generally. So actually, it's quite challenging to hold on to a good careers advisor. So that does mean that that will obviously impact on the programme. And then, I've talked about the financial constraints. We talk about skills investment. We are often balanced on a lot of sand, and this is definitely one of the programmes that is, in terms of what we're able to do with what we have and planning forward. But we do punch above our weight. So.
Thank you. But actually, a really positive story. I'm back to Brandon in a second. I just want to, before the meeting, we was all reminiscing about how easy it was when you were 13 to get a job. Some people didn't like the jobs. But I often get in Reddit, you see it on Spotted Reddit and online, trying to look for a part-time job for my child. My child, finds 15, 14 years old. And it's about, is there any space there to help young people gain that kind of experience in a safe environment? The problem is nowadays is if you can't get a job in a shop like you used to, or those one, you end up going door to door asking, can we put the law, which perhaps isn't a safe environment. So is there anything there to help our young people who want to have some actual work experience, get out for those little part-time jobs that they can do?
That's not something that we do, and I would say there's probably a whole load of red tape as to why it couldn't happen. It's a real issue. A lot of young people that we see will have had. We run a program called Careers Worcestershire, which is 16 to 24-year-olds. We've got a new hub opening in Redditch, opened but official opening soon. And a lot of the young people that we see who are coming in with benefit programs have never worked, because actually it's really hard to get a part-time job. You can get them in things like hospitality, but even that now has a lot of challenges in terms of availability of opportunities. I think a lot of you mentioned sort of retail, a lot of the typical places where we would have gone in the past for jobs, really hard to get through their recruitment process for young people, and because of the way they've structured their recruitment processes. So yeah, unfortunately, not something that we're talking about. We do absolutely, we work with the Education Business Partnership to ensure that we support as much as possible to get work experience opportunities. And I think that's something that's going to be on the agenda potentially moving forward, as it has been talked about. That's something that might come down our way, but at the moment we don't have a role in that.
Thank you, Jim. At the when I first read this report, why I got actually because I worked for an employee for I think 2010 for a number of years, and she used to go around to schools, and it's so frustrating not be able to speak to some of the teachers like, and you're right, they did get a good teacher, and they'd push the children in a certain direction. Another teacher for a different school will not, and that was always the case. And it became so frustrating because nobody either wants or desires, if you want, go to university, so because there are other things out there. But then in 2018, when I was chairman of the authority, I actually went to one of these skilled ones, and my heart was hoping like that because it was so partly to me the change which had happened in the 8 years which have when I first got involved in it. And my question from this, and you've mentioned you've touched on it already, is about where do we go from there? Because how do we reach those schools where the surgery is not so engaging, if you know what I'm saying? Do what we need to do, because some of those youngsters will end up in nets, and which is a shame, really, you know what I mean? Because just by a different opportunity or a different pathway, some things could change. Yeah, sorry. Jodie, would you?
I think there's two things there. Do you want to just talk about private access legislation?
Yeah, so in January 23, the government introduced the new provider access legislation. It's basically been made mandatory now that schools must open their doors to all training providers, university colleges, etc., to ensure that young people are made aware of all of the career choices and transition choices available to them. Whereas in the past, what we, I'm not going to pick any school in particular, but in the past, there was elements of we will only promote our sixth form because that's the route we'd like to take these young people to go to. So we're in a position now where this legislation is supporting the fact that young people are in a better position to make a more informed choice of the relevant pathways that are available to them. It's only one element of the change that's come in. It will support schools to make sure, because it's a mandated element, they'll be assessed on it by Ofsted during inspections. But what will also happen is there's a big wording phrase that's changed, and it has gone from all or overwhelming majority to all. So now it's a mandatory requirement that every young person gets those encounters and meets those people, whereas before it was overwhelming majority, and that's a massive shift in language and change within the system as well. So that will see a massive influence moving forward. We're still very much in the first academic year of that being delivered, and some schools are finding it challenging. You know, some schools are still at the point where they're all the overwhelming majority rather than all, but they're certainly working towards that.
I think one of the interesting things with that is that because it's in legislation, a provider can essentially put in a formal complaint to the DfE that the school won't let them in. So what then happens is we would have to investigate that to rationalise why that might be. There are some reasons that we can justify, but if there is no reason and rationale, then essentially the government will, I suppose, take that school to through some form of legal process, and we don't know what the outcome. So everyone's kind of waiting on tenterhooks for that to happen, because it will happen at some point. And I think it will be really interesting to see what the government does in terms of any measures that it then takes against that school.
Thank you.
Just in addition to that, you know, this is a work is never done. So you've always got a free flow of children, you've always got a free flow of teachers. So you know, I think it demonstrates the need for the longevity of the programme and the work happening so far, because there is always that churn. And you know, the school show has been going after COVID for a number of years, but it's always new people coming through. So those experiences and that longevity is really important.
And to take the sort of second point that you made, we do within our funding stream. So again, things have changed. So prior to Brexit and when we had European Social Funds, which we've had up until December last year in this county, we had funds that would enable us to do specific programmes that targeted young people who would likely be needs with extra interventions in schools. Unfortunately, the new UK Shared Prosperity doesn't allow that, because it's not about it's a vital difference, which is the old ones were 50-year-old plus, these are 16-year-old plus. So therefore, you can't intervene in year 11. What they've tried to do is kind of put some money through and create an enterprise company to support that. And we have a programme where we're targeting
67 young people from the 3 AP schools in year 11.
Where we do some specific targeted work for those. But the reality is that, you know, we used to get £100,000 to do some of this work, and we put out of 15,000. So it's more about what we're able to do within the rest of our mechanisms than the actual thing that's within the contract to do it. We won't be able to do it.
So what you're saying is that we've got to lobby our employees. Thank you, Lee.
And I think they're well aware of it, is what I would say. But something that needs to change.
I'm looking to you. I'm going to say that kind of touching on a point you made, there are so many opportunities for micro conversations about careers in classrooms, because
when you're learning a subject, knowing why it's important to learn is often quite good for a young person. You know, maths, I don't like maths, I don't really like it, but when they say actually, well, you will need maths. I mean, it used to be, don't know, well, you're never going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time. Well, show them, didn't we? But it's there. But knowing why you should learn it, because actually it's going to help you in these kind of careers. So are there conversations you're having with teachers to help that training of how can you inspire people really early on, just the micro conversation?
Yeah, so it's one of the benchmarks. So one of the benchmarks is about how do you embed careers into curriculum, and it focuses on some specific areas. Maths is one of them, and just said it's National University Day today. So very well. So that does happen, and that is one of the benchmarks. It is one of the harder ones to implement, is worth saying, and we are doing a lot. We really recognise the role of a teacher as a trusted adult, particularly in some of our young people that are most disadvantaged. They will really see that teacher as almost their parent figure and their guide and their advisor. And you know, ultimately the issue is, and I always make the expression that when you go to that young person and I say, oh, Mrs. Marshall, I'd really like to do an apprenticeship. And Mrs. Marshall goes, because she doesn't know anything about apprenticeships. Then actually I've now gone, oh, I'm not going to do one because Mrs. Marshall don't do things, because that's her facial expression that she's made. That's what I've read from that. But actually it's just a lack of understanding. So that's why the teacher encounter program is so important. We're piloting that this term. We're going to cover.
So we're covering, we've given a small pot of money from the Careers and Enterprise Company to pilot a teacher encounter program. It's covering two streams effectively, which is SLT members or curriculum leads from 7 schools, offering 2 teachers from each school. So we'll have 14 teachers in total that will participate in that teacher encounter program. The basis behind that is that they will come out of school for the day and they will go and visit a local employer who we have worked with to set up almost a work experience but for teachers. During that work experience model, they will not only learn about the industry sector that directly links to the curriculum subject they're shaping. So, for example, if it was a maths teacher, we're going to look at engineering companies. And if it was a PE teacher, we've got now we wish to Cricket Club. We're going to do, you know, there's a direct synergy between their curriculum subject and what they're leading on and the employer. But throughout that day, they'll learn more about the organisation. They'll learn more about the HR and recruitment routes. They'll look at the entry routes as well. So whether it's apprenticeships, internships, what skills and qualifications they're looking for young people to hold at those entry level roles. They'll get a hands-on practical experience. So it may well be actually getting out into the shop floor and handling the machine and showing where those math skills are used when they're setting up things. So what our hope is that we're really inspired this bank of teachers to go back into school to actually let's embed careers more within the curriculum. It will give us that opportunity for a teacher to be standing up in front of the class and actually talk about their own experience of the workplace while they're supporting their young people to actually use that knowledge and understanding exactly what you said about the fact that why am I need to use maths in the workplace? Well, here's a prime example of why you should. The second stream is a piece of work that we've been doing now for this academic year, which is focusing on training teachers. So we've created a link with Worcester Uni, and what will happen is we've actually created a voluntary module with them that's all about careers. And surprisingly, 26 of these trainee teachers have taken it up. It's the second highest take up on their voluntary modules that they've got. And what it's done is it's given them an early understanding of the entire careers landscape. It's given them all of the knowledge they need to know as early as possible on why they should be embedding careers within the curriculum. Our thoughts around that is, let's not allow a teacher to become institutionalised and get in the habit of not including careers in their curriculum. Whereas if we're targeting trainee teachers, it means it becomes second nature to them. So every new cohort, year on year, that enters our schools now will have that knowledge, have that understanding, and realise the importance of delivering careers in the curriculum. And it's been very, very successful. We've had our own encounter day where one of our local employers, Nazak, hosted the 26 teachers. They did tours, they've had talks from specialists, other employers, and some of the feedback we've had has been brilliant. But they'll also now be undertaking that teacher encounter themselves. And as part of this teacher encounter programme, those 26 will have an individualised work placement of their own now, that they will go out into the workplace and gain that practical knowledge based on the curriculum subjects they will be teaching.
University also embedded that into the wider programme, so those teachers are also doing a piece reflecting that to the rest of the cohort as well. So again, we're hoping that, you know, we might only be taking 26 of the cohort, but actually by doing this, it will reflect the entire cohort. And I think the real positive of this is that if a young person understands why it's doing maths, why they're doing maths, why they're you know, if that's part of their end goal because they need to get their GCSEs because they want to go on to an apprenticeship, and maths is a huge part of that. Actually, what the schools see is a link to attendance improvements, but also linked to results improvements. It's quite clear that when a young person knows that if you get through, schools going to become much more important.
Yeah, following that, obviously you can be training teachers to do a lot of career side of things. But one of the challenges, I've got a couple of questions on the challenges. So one thing you mentioned is obviously lack of careers. I did look up pay. Yeah, that's certainly it's like 21 to 35,000 for someone with probably a postgraduate qualification. It's pretty low. So, I mean, maybe by teaching a lot of teachers to do a lot of careers, in a way, you're kind of maybe negating the need of how do we help get more careers advisors, and how many schools just don't have a careers advisor, or do some schools share them? I guess how that works.
So it's a mixed model, isn't it? Some will have their own, some will buy it in as a service, and some Max will share across the trust. There are some gaps in the county where, you know, either we intervene or the college will support them will intervene, because again, it might be in their interest to support the schools and have that careers advice that might advise about going to FE routes. So yeah, it is an issue. We have careers advisors that we employ ourselves who work on our 16 to 24 piece, and we have them within our CNVS teams as well. So if we need to, then we can kind of move those into the schools. It's not really the solution. At this point, we can always talk about what went by and whether that would be a good solution to have a bank career advisor within the local authority. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the right solution, because I do think there's a lot about the locality of the school and what's around that school and what that individual have as intelligence. It's really helpful to move those young people forward. But yes, it's an issue. The other thing that we are doing is that the Local Enterprise Partnership has a programme called Boot Camps, which is about accelerating people into careers, and we are exploring whether we can offer a boot camp in information advice and guidance in order to fill some of this. I think there's a mismatch, because the government expects information advice and guidance officers to have a degree in INEG, but actually, because it's a level 6 qualification, it's often about management. They're not doing a management job. So it's a bit of a mismatch. So you often find that people do the level 6 and then transition quite quickly into careers leader roles or into other roles. The other issue is that the careers leader role in a school, so every school has to have a careers leader as part of their senior leadership team. It's not the same as deputy headship. So a lot of people will use it as a stepping stone into deputy headship. When we lose a careers leader, it has a significant impact. You've got someone new, you've got to set up to train them all over again quite often. And this year we have 20 something.
So in the last 2 years, we've had 20. This September alone, we had 9 careers leaders change.
Quite a big.
So the careers leader change.
It's definitely going, yeah, just looked
Yeah.
at my CV to do this, but I'm actually not.
But there's also the difference in certain schools and how they implement the careers leader role.
Yeah.
Some schools, like Judy's mentioned, who has a head that perhaps really embraces the whole agenda, will have it as a standalone role. So the careers leader then can work full time on the careers agenda, and you'll see their programs flourish. It's brilliant. You've got others that will have it as part of a deputy headship role, and they're also the lead of safeguarding and transitions, head of sixth form. It's like a fit bolt on to an existing role. And that's where you find, like Julie's mentioned, that you get that churn, because it is then just a stepping stone to a bigger or better role.
There is a push nationally to try to kind of, make this more of a specific profession and a role. So careers leaders have a training, they have to go through a specific training to be a careers leader, and they would like that to be recognised by the DfE as a sort of, similar to a deputy headship in a school as a position. But as yet, don't know, so when the new strategy comes out, we know a little bit about what it's going to say, but it might be something that's within that.
Another question about the next challenge, which is the financial constraints. Obviously, we talked about, if you've got about 400k, about half of which is done with grants. So that's a challenge again. Is it just the risk of all the cuts generally? There's a risk of that money that we put in, the 200,000, starts to disappear. And I suppose my question then is, how do we cope? Because I think you could probably show a lot of return on that investment, but not going to pay for county council putting around half of one. It's not loads of money, yet it seems to be doing really well. How you sell it to someone senior and say, no, don't cut this because look how good they. Can you give them evidence to show yes, it really does make?
Yeah, I think the first element is continue to show that the work that we're doing and the impact that's happening, and the fact that we are punching up our weight and the improvements in place, demonstrating that, and then all of the gather the kind of quality aspects in terms of feedback and support from schools. So there is that, the kind of constantly showing that we're demonstrating a difference. I think there is a challenge in terms of impact, because the impact and the work that Matt and the team are doing to track that impact through in terms of employment takes time. So it is quite hard to do that, but we are Julie's team kind of demonstrating that they are doing more than what we think we should be doing. So it's kind of constantly doing that. I think we are creative in the use of funding as well, in terms of other programmes that we get through, and the fact that we run from an academic year rather than a financial year, and just managing our budgets and our finances as creatively as possible to keep the programme going. But ultimately, at some point, we will ask for resource, and then that is a political council decision in terms of budget approval. So at some point we will need your support. This is something that we want you to do.
And I think because this reports into the local enterprise partnership, obviously it reports into their board as well. And Simon Garrity is part of that board, and he's very supportive, and he always talks about his desire to continue this programme. I feel like we are currently in a really good place, but yeah, it is an issue.
Sure. I actually that's been the point beginning of the day. Sorry, stopping in there. Finance is really, as you say, it's that political decision. Honestly, I think
Yeah, I mean, I'm really conscious. I welcome people. I've heard about the new notes start coming into schools and being informed of the importance of careers and it has to take place. I find it very almost impossible to believe that some schools. I understand the pressures that schools are under. But I find it almost impossible to understand that some schools perhaps don't take careers advice as importantly as perhaps they should, because the advice, the quality of the advice that they get or don't get is going to have an impact on that child for the next 50 years or so. So I think it's hugely important. The other thing which is easy for me to say, and I know it's not possible if you like, perhaps in every family, is the role that parents have to take as well in terms of careers advice. And if I dare say grandparents, you and I had a conversation very recently. I've got a granddaughter who's doing her GCSE now. She adores me, I do assure you, but we have conversations every week about careers, but we have conversations. We talk about all kinds of complexities and challenges, things that I never knew about when I was 16, the opportunities out there, I genuinely didn't know. So I think the work that the team are doing here and the work that should take place in the schools. Every January, I go into my local high school in Tenbury and I conduct mock interviews. I've done it for about 8 years now. And I'm always amazed that some of the children that I interview, they have no idea whatsoever as to what career choice, these are 15-year-olds, as to what career path they want to take. Others are absolutely spot on, the clarity's there. Now, it doesn't matter, I don't think, if at age 15 you don't know what career path you want to take. It's a journey, you know, and if you're going to go on to further education, then so be it. But the other thing I can just raise, which I think is hugely important and where many changes have taken place in recent years, and that's to do with apprenticeships. I can remember a time very well when, you know, apprenticeships were for those young people who weren't able, didn't have the ability to follow an academic career. And successive governments at that time would put a figure on the number of children that they want them to go to university. Whereas I think that's very different today. Apprenticeships are being viewed in an entirely different way. And I know from my time in Malvern, on Malvern Hills District Council, a lot of the high-tech companies there, for example, who employed, the majority of their staff were employed with PhDs. And now, I see someone's nodding there, and now, of course, they are looking at apprenticeships, but they're tailor-made apprenticeships for young children who are showing their natural aptitude in a particular area, and then they are putting programs together for them, and they're progressing right through. So apprenticeships are not just for bricklayers anymore. You know, apprenticeships are across the board, and I'm delighted that we are seeing much more apprenticeship growth, if you like, and what have you. So funding. Thank you for the googly there. I can take that away with me.
I might want to, Daniel, you've got a report on here, which comes back into that. How do we try and encourage children into those key positions we need? But Nathan's got a question before we
I've
go.
got a comment and a question, if I may. Really fascinating area, and obviously delighted to see that Worcestershire is putting this issue really high upon our agenda and how far it's come. I don't remember anything like this when I was 15, 16 or so, 30 years ago now. I'm just trying to think back, and it was quite nondescript, really, the careers advice I've done 50 years ago. So it's important that you are facilitating a conversation between future employees and obviously the pupil, you enablers, and you're helping to break down that barrier between employment, because at the age of 13, 14, 15, 16 or so, it's very daunting for those ages then to think, I'm going to go into employment. You know, there's a great barrier there. And I think Dave is absolutely right. I've got a 15-year-old daughter who really switched on, really clever, top sense for everything. But she doesn't know what she wants to do at the moment. Now, privately, you know, I'm slightly worried and concerned, but maybe I shouldn't be. But Grace doesn't know what she wants to do. And I suppose the whole of this agenda is shining a light on, well, these are the options for you. And I think that's really, really important. So therefore, my question then comes on to the Worcestershire Skills Show, which I think that to me sounds really, really important. And I guess you've got some good numbers there. You know, you've got just under 4,000 young people, 28 schools across Worcestershire attending on 2 days. where is it held, please? And did you get a good buy from local employers? You know, that was demonstrated many different areas, and I'm assuming they had like a stall or a, they demonstrated, well, if you want to go into our sector, whether that's engineering or teaching or what they do, or what have you, that they then explained that this is the pathway. So I think the skill show like that is really, really important. And will that be an annual event now?
So it's a 6 weeks.
I thought it would be, yeah.
So unfortunately, we used to do it at Chateau Upney, and actually we used to have a lot more young people, but capacity limits us.
Yes.
So that's why it's only 28 schools. There are other reasons as well. The cost of transport. We do put some bursaries, and the district councils often support us to put some more money into that. However, transport costs are prevalent when it comes to schools buying into that. Yes, absolutely, we'll be doing it annually as long as we can afford to keep doing it. It's not a cheap exercise. We've done this. This is our ninth skill show.
So we did them pre-COVID, after COVID.
Yeah.
We're finding out.
And are they growing every year? Are you getting more employers?
Yeah, reflectively this year we did grow.
Yeah, it's a capacity issue that we have. But yes, absolutely, we did grow. We grew this year because we did a 2-day event. We've never done it as a 2-day, we've done it as a 1-day.
Yeah.
We made that change because actually a lot of the feedback that we had, and it was quite noticeable, it was too busy, and some of the quality of conversations wasn't really there because we were trying to squeeze 3,000 into a day. Yeah. So in order to expanding it over 2 days changed that. It's a big ask from an employer, and actually, Dan's been really interested in this because he attends. But the point is that we advise our employers about what they need to do. We give them a bit of a, don't just come with a table and some leaflet.
Yeah.
You need to bring the have a go. So you need to bring something that you can actually interact with. What's really interesting, and what's really interesting for me this year is those employees that have been coming for a while, you can see how their stands have transitioned and progressed. And how, you've got robot arms and all kinds of different things going on. And then you've got some where you're just like, it's just a bit boring. And you can see young people just don't really go and talk to them. But yeah, Dan attended this year. You were very busy.
We were. So yeah, we attended for the first time last year. We were unsure from a social care, social work careers perspective how that event would go. But we thought as part of the work we've been doing around future workforce, we thought it was an opportunity we needed to do. So we did it for the first time last March, and we were really pleased with the event. It was really engaging, and we did we spoke to a significant amount of young people, but more meaningfully conversations. There were still hundreds of conversations which took place. And yeah, from my perspective, having done it for the first time, a really successful event. We were unsure because it was young people, sort of that 11 to 15 age group. How engaged would young people really be? But actually, we were really surprised and pleased with how engaging it was. So part of our commitment of this piece of work is that we wanted to continue to do it. So we then did the next career show, which was for older young people and young adults, and that was in the autumn. And then we signed up and did it again this spring as well. And then obviously, again, we did sit there and think, gosh, that's a huge commitment to go for 2 days. But again, it was very uneven, and it was really successful. And obviously, one of the things in the evening was it was parents bringing young people along, and so we were able to have some really great conversations with them as well about this type of career. So from our perspective, we found that it was really successful and are committed to continue to do it.
I think it's worth mentioning that the Skill Show is part of a series of 4 annual events that take place. We have the Skill Show, which is targeted from 7 to 10. We then have, as Dan's mentioned, in the autumn term, we have 2 careers and apprenticeship roadshows, which are focused on the older young people, so years 10 through to 13. And that is a different conversation. So rather than the Skill Show, which is there to sort of kind of arouse interest and get them really interested in careers and start exploring their opportunities and their options, the careers and apprenticeship roadmap shows you a bit more of that specific in what you need to do next. What does the employer pathway look like, etc. And then the third in our series of events is our SEND event. So we now hold a specific Life Beyond School event that is targeted at young people from our special education unit schools or any people in mainstream that has an EHCP. So again, it's very, very different conversations in terms of you couldn't have a young person with a skill show with an educational or health need not necessarily get the same level of quality of conversation that they would do at our Life Beyond School event. So we cover all of the age groups and the demographics through our 4 annual event.
I think that segues quite nicely actually into your piece of you. Please take us through that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, as I said earlier, my name is Daniel Gray, and I'm a group manager in social care and safeguarding in Worcestershire. And every year we have a business plan. The key priority of that business plan every year is workforce. It's one of our key assets, and we absolutely know that to run good, successful services, we need a strong and capable workforce. And over the last year, we had a focus of saying actually we wanted to begin to engage in our potential future workforce and different kind of opportunities that we wanted to create to support that. So we engaged with a number of different partners across our local universities and colleges, with Judith and her services and teams to really understand what would we be able to do. And I won't go through it because Judith's gone through it in a lot of detail, the types of opportunities which are there. And as an employer and as a social care service, we've committed to and begun to engage with and to be part of. The last year we've been involved in that annual programme. And as I said before, from our perspective, we found that to be really successful and some really meaningful conversations have taken place. One of the things we really reflected on as an employer was around social work and social care careers. And often this is a career choice which can be a little bit hidden. It's a career which is often presented in the media very negatively when something has gone wrong, which sadly sometimes that does happen, but that is a very, very small percentage across the many, many children and families that we work with and support and have really successful outcomes. But people don't often see that side of it. Or social work is often portrayed in possibly not the most accurate way in the media, in social workers will often say that that's not right, but this is the impression which is being given. And we wanted to create a space to engage young people, to actually put social work on the map and to create a space for people to think about this. We're also very conscious. We're working in a very sensitive, safeguarding environment where we can't say we're going to bring lots of young people directly into the workplace. We need to balance that in the right way. So we wanted to create an engagement opportunity to bring young people in with a health and social care who are undertaking that course and wanting to come into this type of work in the future. So we worked in partnership with Worcester Sixth Form College, just across the road, to develop and run some pilot engagement events. And we've run 3 of those across the last year, and we've engaged with 70 young people on health and social care courses. And they've been really successful, and we've run them with our staff internally. So staff have taken time out of their busy days to come and do that and to give them a window into our world and into the experiences you can have as a social worker and the great and amazing things that social work can achieve with families. And the feedback we've had directly from the college and from young people has been really successful. We've taken that to develop it. So when we've run that course again, we've built that in, and the feedback again was very positive in terms of the opportunities that we've shown young people. And it's creating a window to see what it was really like. A lot of the feedback we've had is that often I think people saw that as health was big and social care was quite small in that health and social care space. But the feedback that we've had is that actually people have become really interested in social care and social work careers. So we're not necessarily going to see an impact of that right here, right now, but we're starting to put it on the map and actually giving people the information to say, well, actually, if you did want to come into social work, and it's not just social work itself, but all those support roles around it, how you can take those steps into it, or if you needed to go and do your degree to become a social worker, the steps to achieve that as well. And there are lots of different ways that people can do that now. So giving that information and actually the feedback from young people, not all, but some is actually, yeah, this is a career choice now that we're really interested in. So it's what we've really tried to do is create the space to put it on the map and to get people interested in social work where it's been quite hidden in the past. So that's what we've done over the last year. And moving forward, we're looking at actually how we can roll that out wider. As I said, we've only done that in partnerships so far with Worcester Sixth Form College. So now it's about saying, well, actually, how can we roll that opportunity and do these events with other sixth forms and colleges across Worcestershire to really grow this piece of work. And that's what we wanted to come and share with you as an addition to the work that Judith and the team and sort of actually how it can work a little bit in practice and the successes that we can have from it, really. So, thank you.
I think it's, I'm going to come to you as well. I think it's really important now that it's not just breaking on the map as this could be a path for you to go into, but it's actually also breaking down barriers. There's a perception sometimes, which is a scary perception of what a social worker is, and families can be scared to say, actually, I need to speak to a social worker for support, because they actually have a genuine fear of it. If we're talking quite young to young people about this, we're breaking down these barriers, which in years to come, then, well, actually, I need to support myself. I now know where to go. And I think that is so important to have those early interventions, those early prevention steps, families strong and connected. So thank you very much for listening to you.
I just wanted to share, I mean, if you think you're right, you know, everything we do in Worcestershire, you know, and all of my track, you know, they've all got connections and families and you know, that feeling of what is it social workers do, is something that we're always keen to just, communicate really positively. And I just wanted to share with you a letter that I received about 3 weeks ago from a year 6 pupil at the Grange in Worcester. And the class were tasked to write to somebody that they felt would be a future employer. And this is a letter that I received from this young boy. Dear Sir or Madam, I'm writing to you today to show my sincere interest in becoming a social worker for your county. I have a passion for social care and would love to join your beautiful environment. I would be a good social worker because I am empathetic and I enjoy talking with people about their problems. I'm also very patient, so if they require more time than usual and need to talk to me about their problems, they can. I also think I will be a strong candidate because right now at school I'm a prep reader. This means I read to the year 1s and the year 2 children, and I also help them with their schoolwork, enabling them to improve on it. In addition, I love playing outside with the year 3 children, and I've made quite a few buddies from playing with them and teaching them their football skills. I have seen what I need to do to get this job, so I'm going to work really hard to get all the degrees that I need to work with you. I've heard so much about your wonderful council and what you do for children and others, and that is why I chose your council and so many others. Thank you for considering this letter. I look forward to you.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
That is really lovely. It made me cry too. I just, every time I read it, it makes me, and I just think, you know, it is getting out there, you know, we have a good service and we want to help people, and but we will protect, we need to, but and that's just a really good example of, you know, it's hitting home. People here understand that, you know, children's social work is a good place to work and we do a really good, important job for children and families.
Questions on that part of it? I think it's I think that was just that is really showing the success of the work that you're doing in practice. But then it's also not only helping people find prospects into education, but also helping us find our future workforce. And I think that's something we can perhaps look to utilise for other jobs. If I tell my daughter at uni, she's doing mental health for young people, female nurse, and you instinct that if you'll get a job, that's not a problem. But of course, making sure that more young people go into that, and education psychologists and these jobs that we desperately need, but people don't necessarily think of. when they are thinking of their career path. I think we can utilise yourselves then to really make sure we're getting those particular there. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We're going to go on to, is there anything, sorry, you want to say, I've got our cabinet members before we post going out to the work programme.
From me only, as I just mentioned down there, that, you know, we mentioned before about, or he mentioned before about the bad press and the bad media. Maybe we should spend some time talking about getting some good stuff out there and showing what we are doing for the benefit of the community and taking away some of those negatives.
I have one comment about that, and it's nothing to do with the agenda, but I'd just like to thank your office of if I can, for the way they helped us whilst I was in your role, Madam Chair. They are an amazing set of people, and I'm truly grateful to them. I would also congratulate your new appointment, and I'd like to say congratulations to Tina Russell on her new appointment, but I won't. But I will thank Tina for all the work you helped you gave me on this panel. I think you've already given me the last 10 days in the new role, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the work.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Right. So, work. This obviously just went through OSD. So that's the reason, it's all been decided and approved. It's not huge, I think there's some work done to condense the work programme here a bit. So we have got room to add some items on. But obviously we'll look at the next meeting. We've got the impact of Worcestershire children first being brought back in-house. I think that's going to be a really important one for us to do, to utilise and look into something very much looking into that. And then we've got the SND Ofsted CQC inspection. So there's got the next
2 bits.
it's going to be a full one. So I don't know if we're going to be able to browse on that, because I think that's going to be a really important one for us to get our teeth in. So you know, bring a coffee with you. And so everyone happy with what they've got currently? And one suggestion I was spoke about before, and I know you want to also talk about something, which was the work we do with the early years, and through our health visitors and our clinics that we've got, our classes we do with young infants on screen time, and it's quite salient to be looking at screen time at the moment with young people, as there's a report that's been presented at connecting increased screen time on young people with instances of mental health. And it's also being spoken about in the House of Commons. So I'd like that to be added to our work programme. And then you wanted to make sure we were including everything like that.
Yeah. So there's lots of reports going around there. So basically, the BBC article, BBC Gloucestershire yesterday. You search BBC Gloucestershire, type in the word something like toxic school, you will find that was one of the teachers saying it. So it's just about the pressure on schools to, become slightly exam factories. That some of them are putting a lot of kind of restrictions, pressure on pupils to be kind of stuff that understandable, but maybe too much of it, too much pressure, and so something that maybe we need to be looked at to does this happening with schools, are the concerns, and then he's as you said earlier, and I think what kind of role do parents and pupils have, because at the end of the report it's also kind of a survey done to parents find it, and it's like kind of quite negative, even though the school got a good Ofsted. As you said, 70% said their child was unhappy at school. And, we want to focus on, we want to have happy children who do well at school and get good grades. We don't want to have good grades and expect unhappiness. And so it's something looking into that area.
More like, so the school surveys is the one, and then how open and transparent they are to the wider community who might be looking for
Yeah.
this book.
How do you find that out?
So I'd be able to maybe talk to some, talk to some schools and say, what is your process? And finding out if there is an ideal process that schools are using, what is coming. I think that's talking to.
Because I think when I said about the quote is 70% of the people getting like that. I just wondered how they found that figure out, you said, because I think
There's an Ofsted, I think it's part of the Ofsted, it said, because obviously when you have an Ofsted, they talk to parents what they think. So the Ofsted could see that 70% said their child was unhappy. 51 said they didn't feel the child was safe at this particular school, but then it's still got to be the open stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of questions, but so there's academies, so obviously that is an issue as well. We have less say in input into academy.
No, I was just thinking, so, because if that kind of figure is only picked up by the Ofsted reports, then it depends whichever school you pick in Worcestershire. Unless you go through an Ofsted, we wouldn't know their figures. That's what I mean. I was trying to get it.
No.
Yeah, I think we need to think about how we do this school wide rather than individual schools.
No.
It doesn't know if there is going to be a Worcestershire wide approach. It might be best practice.
No, I think that's it. It's about best practice, finding out our schools, some schools maybe going down this route, because they think it will get them better offset better grades maybe, but then it's understanding what is the impact on the child. We don't have lots of unhappy children at schools.
That's fine, if a report comes to someone. Is there that best practice on how parents and children can report?
Well, if I could, if you work with those and Alison, and to try and co-opt some.
We'll do a bit.
But it's not that same, you know what I mean? So.
We'll do some research.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Whenever that fits in, it's not really
Well, we'll have
quick, but yeah.
And then there was one movement we picked up in the meeting,
Yes.
which was valuing care project coming now over the month of September.
That's it, yes, that's it.
Yeah. There might be something else in September we're looking for. Safeguarding report.
Well, it means then that September we might be able to have that report on screen time. If that gives you, we'll have to speak to it after the time to bring up reports.
So we've got you some comments to the budget as well in September, which is on the design page.
Do you know anything about, because I'm sure David, when he came in, he said that he thought he could escape home to school transport. He's been told, he's got home to school transport.
We will be looking at homeschool transport within this, and if that means we need to go on paper resource briefings, I will be looking at all opportunities and however we get the information that we need to be able to scrutinise. And if that means some of the data is confidential, so we will go into a confidential setting in order to be able to look at it, because we as we need to be able to see that data.
Yeah,
So very much, I'm going to be pushing as you're there.
Unbelievable.
Anything else to do with this?
No.
Thank you so much for your for
Thank you,
supporting
Chair.
my first ever account here. So hopefully next time we'll have a few more members to be able to
Right.
send out an email to you. So
Sure, that's
my
fine.
details.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hold on.